Hi, it's Dion here. Um, I just figured I would make a quick video. Um, it's today's my day off. I'm off of work today. Um, and I've been trying to wake up and look alive today, but it's the it's one of the 2 days that I get to actually sleep later. Because usually when I wake up in the morning for work, I get up about between 2 and 3 in the morning, 2 and 3 a.m. because I start work at 6, and I don't like to be rushed in the morning. So I like to have enough time to just sit back and relax for a while before I have to run out the door. So I get up quite early so that I have enough time for what I like to call me time. I like to have time for myself to do whatever it is I want to do, whether it's watch something on um, my TV or, yeah, I have a TV now. I used to just have a tablet in my room, but my son and his girlfriend gave me a really nice TV, a smart TV, that connects with my Netflix, my Hulu, my Tubi that I have. I have all kinds of stuff that I had on my tablet that I used to watch different shows and movies on. So now I have a TV that connects to all that stuff that I can watch on a bit of a bigger screen. So it's really nice. I like it. My son always looks out for me. One thing about my son, we have a really outstanding relationship, and I think I owe a lot of that to being off drugs, because even though when he was little and I was using drugs, he was pretty close with me, and he never really judged me for the fact that he knew something was wrong with me. He didn't know exactly what, but he loved me anyway. Um, when I would be going out to make my money for the drugs for the next day, sometimes he would wait up for me to make sure that I made it home okay. Um, it broke my heart that I was living that way, and I couldn't be the mother that my son needed me to be for him. Um, I have 3 sons, but the son I'm referring to is my oldest son. He lived with my mother from the time he was born until he was 9 years old. When he was 9 years old, my mother took an overdose of Oxycontin. We don't know if it was intentional or accidental. There was an autopsy done, and we know she died of Oxycontin overdose. But she talked about suicide many a times because she was in such a deep depression. I think she was in a deep depression partially because she was dying. She was dying of AIDS, and I think she also was depressed because she relapsed back on drugs in 2002, and she could never pull herself out of that rut that she was in to get back any clean time again. She couldn't manage to get clean again, and she just felt like she didn't have a lot to live for, I guess. I guess if I was in her position, I might feel the same way. But what kills me is that my son was 9 years old and he had to find her. Um, on the floor, dead next to the bed. I never wanted my son to be in that kind of situation, and that was always my fear. It was always my fear that my son would be alone with my mother and he would find her in that situation. And that was always my biggest fear. And I was actually incarcerated in jail at the time, and they came and broke the news to me in jail, and I got released early because of the circumstances. I've had a real hard time dealing with my mother's death, mostly because my mother and I were at odds with one another a lot of the time. When she relapsed on drugs, her personality changed dramatically in many ways. She went from being somebody who was very caring and compassionate about me, to somebody that was very vengeful and vindictive against me. She would, there were times I would live with her for periods of time, and she would always demand rent money out of me. And she knew I couldn't get a job, so she knew the only way that I could get the money was through working the streets, prostituting. And it made it hard on me because I not only had to get money for my drugs the next day, but I had to get additional money to give her rent money. And it's always been something that bothered me. It's like, she knew I was already putting myself in a dangerous situation. Why would she make it even worse for me by asking me to give her additional money, which meant I had to be out even longer than I should have been out. Because if I just needed to get my drug money, it would have been a lot quicker than if I had to get additional money to give her. And she never minded me giving her the money, but we'd get into an argument a day or two later, and she would throw it in my face, the fact that I was doing what I was doing to make money. It's like she didn't mind it when I was giving her the money, but when all was said and done and the money was spent, she would throw it in my face, the fact that I made the money the way that I did. And in her mind, she thought that I was doing what I was doing because I was an oversexed freak and I enjoyed doing what I was doing. Contrary to popular belief, I hated doing what I was doing. I hated every single second of it. I felt like I was being raped over and over again because in a matter of speaking, it was against my will. I didn't want to be doing what I was doing. I hated it. I mean, I would dread the moment when I'd have to walk out that door and hit those streets. That was like the worst part of my day. I was always hoping I would get the money as quick as possible so I could go home and be safe. I always knew I was putting myself in a dangerous situation. I always knew I was putting myself in harm's way. And at the time when my mother passed away, we were on speaking terms. She had given me some money to get her some methamphetamine, and I got a hold of the dealer, and I wasn't at my house yet. I was walking to my house, but I hadn't made it there yet. He got to my house before I did, and because he knew me and had been dealing with me for several years, and he thought the drugs were for me, he left 2 bags of heroin with my husband for me. And when I got there and I discovered that he left heroin instead of meth, I didn't know what to do about it. I mean, I was totally lost about the situation, about what to do about it, because he wouldn't come back in and exchange the bags for the other stuff. And when the next day came and I didn't have any heroin, I did the heroin. I was a drug addict, you know. I didn't do it to spite my mother or to rip her off. It wasn't my intention to rip her off. I intended on giving her exactly what she wanted, but it just didn't work out that way. And my mother was a really difficult person to get along with. She would get mad at me very easily, and she would hold my son against me and wouldn't let me see my son if something happened between her and I. So I didn't call her and tell her what happened, because I knew she would blame me and turn it around on me and say, yeah, right, he gave you the wrong stuff, or I knew she would blame me for it and just get pissed off at me. So I didn't call her, and we didn't speak. We weren't speaking for about a month and a half. And then I got the news that she passed away. And I've been at odds about how to feel about her death for several reasons. First of all, because we weren't talking. I feel bad about that we couldn't have made amends before she passed away and couldn't have been on speaking terms. I wish that things were better between us. Um, it kills me that our relationship got so twisted and turned upside down and inside out because it went from a normal mother-daughter relationship to a relationship of two addicts just trying to score drugs together all the time. And it was so dysfunctional, I mean, at best, that it was not what I wanted to have. When I met my ex-husband, he came over to my mother's house, and him and his friend hung out in my room with me that night. And I was really embarrassed that he knew my mother did drugs. And he knew that my mother and I casually, we didn't do drugs together per se. We didn't sit in the same room and do drugs together. I did drugs in my room and she did drugs in her room. But if I bought drugs, I gave her some. She gave me drugs. It was really chaotic, dysfunctional type of relationship. I mean, it was really disgusting, and I'm really quite ashamed of the relationship that we had together now. And I was embarrassed back then that my husband knew that my mother was on drugs, because I knew in the back of his mind he was judging her, and looking down on her in some way, shape, or form because of her being a drug addict. I just wish she could have left this world in a better way. I wish she could have left this world in a way where she left with some dignity and self-respect. Because when you die of an overdose, whether it's accidental or intentional, there's a stigma around that kind of death. It's not dignified. It's an inhumane way to leave this earth. And she died that way, and her younger brother died that way. My uncle was living on the streets. He was a IV heroin user, and he was shooting up some heroin, and there were about 5 people all sitting in a circle, from what I was told, shooting up their drugs, and everyone watched my uncle overdose. And he had a pocket full of money. So instead of saving his life, they let him die so they could rob him. And when I found out my uncle passed away, I cried so hard, because I thought he died in the streets all alone. When they found him, he was laying on top of a shopping cart. Somebody put him on top of a shopping cart. And they did it out of respect, believe it or not, because he was laying on the ground like he was a nothing, like he was a piece of garbage laying on the ground. And they put him on top of the shopping cart to show him some respect, that he was human. He wasn't a piece of trash. So I appreciate that much. But and when they came to tell my grandmother that he passed away, they didn't knock on her door, sit her down in a very compassionate way and tell her about her son's passing. They left a card in her door, telling her about him being in the morgue or something. It was something very, very cold and cruel, the way that they told her. It was very inhumane, the way they gave her that information. Just left a card on her door. She opened up her door. It fell to the ground. She picked it up, and when she looked at it, she was just in shock. She said, "This is how they told me?" She said, "They didn't tell me in person?" I feel so bad for my grandmother because she buried 2 of her 3 kids before she left this earth. And it was a really awful way to have to live the rest of her years knowing that 2 of her children passed away and there was nothing she could do about it. My grandmother's a death that I can't seem to get over because even though she was elderly, she was almost 91, and I knew her time on earth was going to come to an end at some point in time. I still wasn't ready for her passing. I wasn't ready to lose her. My aunt had gotten COVID, and instead of leaving and going and staying somewhere else, I don't care where she stayed, she went right back to my grandmother's house and stayed in my grandmother's house with my grandmother, having COVID, knowing if my grandmother got COVID, it would be a death sentence for her because of her age. She got COVID, she went to the hospital, and she was in the hospital for a while, and then they told my cousins to bring her home, and that she wouldn't make it for very long. She came home from the hospital and she died within 24 hours. And I remember when she died, I made it there just shortly after she passed away. And I sat by her bedside, held her hand, and I just sobbed for a couple hours and just cried and just told her how much I loved her. And and I just told her how much she meant to me. And I always say that my grandmother had the biggest shoes in the world, and nobody in this world could fill her shoes because her shoes were so gigantic. I mean, she was a saint in my eyes. She was the picture perfect of a human being, of what a moral, decent human being should be. I only wish I could be more like my grandmother in the way that she conducted her life. She wasn't perfect, but she made far fewer mistakes in her life than I ever did. She just tried to do the right thing with everything that happened to her in her life. She just tried to do the right thing. And sometimes she was right, sometimes she was wrong. But she just tried to do what she thought was the best thing in every situation that she had to handle. And she was truly a wonderful, unique individual because she was so special and she was so giving. She gave her whole heart and soul to her family. Last Christmas, I went to my grandmother's house for the first time since she passed away, and I had Christmas dinner with my 2 cousins, my son, and my son's girlfriend. And it was a nice dinner. I mean, it was nice. My cousin made a really nice meal and stuff. But it felt so strange being in that house without my grandmother there. It didn't feel right. I so wanted to see her, and she wasn't there, and she'll never be there. And I really miss my grandmother. I have dealt with so much death in my life, especially in the last maybe 14 years. My mother died. 5 months later, my father died. A couple years later, my uncle died. A couple years later, my grandmother died. A couple years later, the love of my life died. I mean, I have nobody left except my kids. I feel so alone in this world. And so alone. I feel so utterly alone. I feel like other than my kids, I have nobody. my aunt, my grandmother's youngest child, is still alive. She's living in the streets. Last time I spoke to her, she was living in the streets, right down the street from where I live. Um, she may have found a place to stay since then. And I hope she did, because even though we don't see eye to eye on many issues, and she won't change her life and get her shit together for anything, not even for her kids. I still have love for her, and I love her unconditionally, and I would like to see her in a better situation, but I know that won't truly ever happen for her until she makes a decision to make real significant changes in her life with herself and how she is as a person. She's very self-centered, and she thinks the world revolves around her, and she doesn't realize that the things she does hurts people around her all the time. She's done so many things to hurt me and my son. She did so many things to hurt my grandmother. I mean, just going back to her house with the COVID, not giving a shit whether or not she gave it to my grandmother or not. She killed my grandmother. I can't get past that idea. You know, that she brought that illness into my grandmother's home so carelessly and didn't think twice about it. I know that my grandmother had another Christmas and birthday to live, and we lost out on spending that time with her. My grandmother was like my best friend in many ways. I could pretty much tell her anything, and she never judged me. She was always kind, caring, and compassionate, and she always saw the best in me. She would always remind me of how well I did in school, how I made the dean's list, you know. She always saw the best in me. I just wish the world would have been kinder to her, because I feel like she was hit with so many blows. She was the second youngest of 8 kids, and she watched all of her brothers and sisters. She lost her mother at 18, her father a couple years later, and she watched each and every one of her brother and sisters pass away in front of her over the years. And she buried her husband after they retired. They retired, and less than a year after they retired, he passed away, my grandfather. I was the only one that didn't get to say goodbye to him, because I was in Chicago and I had a flight to come out to Vegas to spend Easter with them. But he died Easter morning, and that was a terrible blow. I didn't mean for this video to be so depressing. I really apologize. I really didn't know what I wanted to talk about in this video. And thoughts just came to mind. I just started talking about things that were on my mind. I really want to do this career with recovery peer support specialist, because I really think this would be my way of doing something meaningful with my life. I would be giving back to my community by helping people, and I'd be making an income at the same time, and hopefully making my family that's all passed on proud of me for doing something good with my life, making something good out of my life, really doing something important and valuable. And what better way to make an income than by helping people that are struggling with addiction and can't find their way out of that addiction on their own and need a little bit of a nudge from somebody who's been there, who can show them there are ways of getting out of this negative lifestyle you're in. I just hope that what I've learned over the years of my addiction and what I've learned over the years of being out of my addiction, I hope that I have learned enough over that time period to really be somebody who can help somebody find a better way of life, find a better way to live, and make things better in their life for themselves. The one person I wanted to help was my aunt, but she's just so stubborn and so set in her ways that I just don't think I can reach her in order to help her. But I'm hoping I can help other people, and it'll make me feel good about myself that that I'm doing something to help people and doing something really meaningful with my life. A lot of people don't look at my recovery as being legit or real because I'm on a medication in order for me to hold on to my recovery. And that's okay. If they want to feel that way, I can't change their mind. I can only say that when I was in my addiction, when I was actively using heroin, I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't do anything really. All I could do was manage to get enough money to get the drugs for the next day and use the drugs and go on in that same fashion day in and day out. I had no quality of life. I had no meaningful life. It was just a desperate way of surviving from one day to the next. And it was just an existence. It wasn't a life at all. And today, I have a job. It's a bit physically demanding, this job that I'm doing right now. And I'm hoping to be out of it in the next month or two. And to be doing what I really want to be doing, which is helping people with their addictions. But anyone who thinks that I cheated or I'm not really in recovery, if they could only see what my life was like before, and they could compare my life today, what it was compared to what it was then, they would see how much I have made strides of improvement in my life and how I am so different in so many ways. I don't even look the same. I mean, I conduct my life 100% differently than I did 13 years ago. I'm independent. I take care of myself. I pay my own bills. I can fend for myself. I couldn't do that 13 years ago. 13 years ago, I was either living with my ex-husband or living with my mother or living with my grandmother. It would have been more than 13 years ago if I lived with my mother because she was passed away 13 years ago. But what I'm saying is I was living with family of some sort. I could never live on my own. And I never had a bank account or paid my own bills or had anything of value in my life. I mean, now I furnished my room with all new furniture. And it's not just about material things, it's just about the fact that I have something to show for myself. I've worked hard and I have nice things to show for what I've done with my life. I bought things for myself that were necessities, like a bed and stuff, you know. But anyone who thinks that I haven't changed and that this methadone that I'm taking every day hasn't transformed my life into something much more meaningful and made my life much more beneficial, then they don't know what they're talking about. Because I'm living my life every day and I know how different my life is today compared to what it was many years ago when I was in the trenches of my addiction. And I know my life is 100% different. And I know that I've transformed my life miraculously. And it wasn't just methadone that did it. Methadone was just the tool that helped me make the changes. But I'm the one that made the changes. I'm the one that got the job. The methadone was just the tool that made those things possible. But I put in the work to make it all happen. And I shouldn't question whether or not my loved ones that have passed on are proud of me. I should know they're proud of me. Because if they've been watching, and many of them were actually physically with me when I was in my addiction, they saw the life I was living. And if they could see me today, and I'm sure they do see me today, then they know that I've done something right. But I was going to do something that I decided I was going to make a routine thing that I was going to do on camera, because somebody else did this and I thought it was kind of a cool idea. But I'm going to make it a routine thing of me to do on camera. I'm going to take my methadone on camera to show people exactly. I've done this once before, but I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to continue to do it to show people what a simple thing it is to do to take medication every day. And it's to see how simple it is to just take one dose of medication, and this dose is going to help transform my life into something meaningful and beneficial. So here goes nothing. 103 milligrams of methadone down the hatch. And we fill it up again with water just to get the full dose. And this is the box of the methadone doses. I have them numbered because if they ever call me for something called diversion, where they have you bring in your box and they inspect your box to make sure you're taking your medication appropriately, you're not abusing it, and you're not giving it away or selling it or anything. So this is for tomorrow. It's got a 5 on it. So this is dose number 5. I put the empty one in the box and I put it away. And that is how that goes. I decided on days when I make the video early enough in the morning before I've taken the dose, I'll take the dose on camera just to show people how simple it can be. To be on methadone and how it's not a hassle. When you first start going to a methadone clinic, yes, it's true. You have to go every day for several months. 5 days a week. At least my clinic goes 5 days a week. Most clinics, most clinics now, it's 5 days a week that you have to go. And they give you a dose for Saturday and Sunday to take home with you. And then you come back on Monday and you bring back the bottles with you. They started, when I first started going to the methadone clinic, we didn't have to bring back the bottles. We could throw them out, or we could do with them whatever we wanted. But now we have to bring back the bottles because people were selling their doses and doing things they shouldn't have been doing. So just to verify that you took your medication, or, I mean, that's the best they can do to prove that you took your medication, is for you to bring back the bottle to prove you still have the bottle, that you didn't give the bottle away to somebody. But honestly, if somebody wanted to sell their medication, they could just as easily switch it into a different container and keep the bottle and bring it back to the clinic and show the clinic, hey, I still have my bottle, I took my medication. And maybe they really didn't take it. Maybe they sold it and did something else that day. But anyway, I'm going to end this video now. I didn't talk much about methadone today. I talked about other things. I just want to let people know that when you get clean, everything isn't perfect when you get clean. You still have problems. You still have life's ups and downs. And I've dealt with a lot of losses since I've been clean. And I didn't use over it, though. No matter what happened, and my grandmother dying, and my son's father, the love of my life, dying, if it weren't for the methadone, I would have most definitely used. Because those were 2 losses that were really quite traumatic for me. But I didn't use over it because I knew that wouldn't solve the problem. It wouldn't bring them back. It wouldn't make me feel better, only but for a short time. And as soon as the drugs wore off, I'd be back to feeling like shit again. So there was no sense in me using over something that wasn't going to get fixed by me using. I hope that I've given the viewers of this video something to think about. That there's always a reason to get clean. There's always a reason to want to change your life for the better. And even when bad things happen and things don't go exactly according to plan, it's not a reason to throw it all away and go back to using again, because that doesn't solve the problem. The best thing you can do for somebody you've lost, if you've lost somebody close to you while you're in recovery, the best thing you can do for them is to continue doing well and continue prospering in your recovery and making them proud. They wouldn't want you to throw your recovery down the drain or lose what you've been working for. they would want you to continue on and be successful. And that's what I'm doing for my grandmother. I'm not allowing her passing to destroy me, even though I miss her every day and I cry for her every day. I continue to do what I need to do to be strong in my recovery and make my grandmother proud, because that's what would bring her the most happiness, is seeing me do well. So I hope this video finds everyone who's viewing it in high spirits and motivated to want to get their lives back together, because everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves to have hope that life can get better. I once had no hope that my life would ever get better, that I would be stuck in my addiction for the end of my days. And I found a way out. And you can too. Believe in yourself, because if you can't believe in you, nobody else can either. Take it easy and take care. Until next time, bye.